Dr. Hovind taught science for 15 years. Then he got his PhD in education. He's always had a love for teaching. But one thing that he's discovered is that in many of the science textbooks across America today, there are some fallacies, some false information being presented. Why is this information in the science textbooks? What are they trying to prove? Hi, my name is Eric, and in this seminar called Lies in the Textbooks, you're going to find out some of those lies that are being presented and what you can do about it.
Well, welcome to our seminar on Lies in the Textbooks. My name is Kent Hovind. I taught high school science for 15 years. And now for, well, since 1989, I've been doing seminars on creation, evolution, and dinosaurs. And our goal is to strengthen your faith in God's Word. Now, this is not my wife. That's just a picture of her. We live in Pensacola, Florida. Been there 16 years. Have 3 children, 1 of each. And I got them all married and the dog died. Praise God, so I'm home free. And as we mentioned earlier, we have 4 grandkids so far, and that's God's reward for not killing your own kids when you thought about it. So we got a whole tribe, and they all live right around me and all work in our ministry. It's a real blessing to all have them right there. God's given us an amazing staff of people at Creation Science Evangelism. Our purpose is to get people saved. Okay? We like science at our place. We have Dinosaur Adventureland. We have a science center, a theme park, and a museum, all kinds of cool science stuff. Some people try to say, well, you Christians are against science. No, 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 I like science. I'm against evolution because it's not part of science. Evolution's a lie, okay? There's no scientific evidence to back up evolution. We'll get into that in just a minute. The Bible says in the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not bear false witness. Don't lie. Proverbs says, a false witness shall not be unpunished. He that speaketh lies shall not escape. God hates liars. The Bible says they delight in lies, okay? These 6 things doth the Lord hate. Yea, 7 are an abomination unto him. A lying tongue, then a couple of verses later, a false witness that speaketh lies. Out of the 7 things God hates, 2 of them are liars. He must really hate them. He lists them in there twice, okay? Jesus said, you're of your father the devil, and the lusts of your father you will do. He was a murderer from the beginning and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he's a liar and the father of it. Now, I like science, and I collect public school textbooks. I have hundreds of them from many, many countries, from clear back from 1880, I believe, to 2005, textbooks. I'm not against science. We happen to really like the subject. We have all kinds of cool science displays at our museum and our science center, and you can come down and visit Dinosaur Adventureland and see for yourself. I am, however, against lying to kids. Now, in the first 3 videos, we talked about how students are being lied to about the Big Bang. It didn't happen. They're being lied to about the age of the earth. It is not billions of years old. They're being lied to about the cavemen. There's never been a caveman, unless you mean Osama bin Laden. Okay? They're being lied to about the dinosaurs. They did not live millions of years ago. Now, here we're going to cover about 30 more lies in the textbooks. There are hundreds we could go through. We're going to try to hit the highlights, and this could go for days just covering lies in our textbooks. I'm going to hit some of the big ones, leave some of the little ones go for another time when we have more time. Now, I am not trying to get evolution out of the public schools. I'm not. I think any theory should be allowed to be taught, if you don't have to lie to support your theory with false evidence, okay? I am not trying to get creation into the schools. And I think Christians that work on either one of those are wasting their time. And many people have wasted hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to accomplish those 2 goals. It's futile. It's not going to happen. I am, however, trying to get lies out of the textbooks. I think we'll find if we take the lies out of the books, there's nothing left to support evolution. Well, that's their problem. They shouldn't have picked such a dumb theory to begin with, okay? It's not my fault, okay? Now, I'm not against teachers. My mother was a godly woman, led my dad to the Lord on their first date. She retired from teaching public school years ago. Been in heaven now for about 7 years. My brother led me to the Lord. He just retired last year from teaching public school after 34 years. There are many good godly teachers in the system. There are many good godly principals, many good godly school board members. I'm not against schools. I'm not against school boards. I'm not against teachers. I'm not against textbooks. I'm against lies. Okay, let's just keep it in perspective. Is there anybody here that thinks teachers or textbooks should be allowed to deliberately lie to students for any reason? And I mean deliberately. They might be lying and not know they're lying, okay, but if they're deliberately lying, that shouldn't be allowed, should it? Okay? Wisconsin has a law that requires textbooks to be accurate. So does Alabama. Textbooks shall be adequate and current, up to date. Okay? The latest information. Texas has a law that says instructional material shall be factual. Go Texas. Okay? Florida has a law that requires accuracy of instructional materials, and the commissioner is responsible to remove books that are not accurate. Well, commissioner, do your job. Okay? Watch this video and remove the books that are not accurate. It's so simple. It's so simple. Okay? California says textbooks shall be factually accurate and reflect current and confirmed research. Okay? Minnesota says a teacher shall not deliberately suppress or distort subject matter. Yeah, sure, hey there, fella, you betcha. The problem is, none of those states enforce their own laws. I don't know if Tennessee here has a law that requires textbook accuracy. They ought to if they don't have one. If you don't have one, pass one. This is a textbook from about 100 years ago. It says, God created the heavens and the earth in 6 days. Prayer is a duty, but it's vain to pray without a sincere desire of heart. God governs the world in infinite wisdom. You believe that's a public school textbook? Well, here's one today. Evolution is fact, not theory. Birds arose from non-birds and humans from non-humans. No person who pretends to any understanding of the natural world can deny these facts. Wow, something's changed. Actually, I was at Chickasaw, Oklahoma a couple of weeks ago. It's supposed to be a debate, but none of the professors would debate me. So they scheduled an evolution seminar 2 days after I was gone. They let me come speak on creation. The student group got me in there. Here's a poster they put up right next to my poster. The poster was inviting people to come to the evolution seminar. Interested in evolution? Well, come on down. Evolution lecture with Dr. Mather and Dr. Ray. It says, hear both sides of the issue. Well, we invited them to debate. They could have heard both sides altogether. Here the kids get 9 months of evolution teaching. I come in for 2 hours and they panic. And then they got to say, here, both sides. Both sides. You're not going to present both sides. You're going to present one side, the evolution side, which is what they already got for 9 months. They don't want to hear it. I think they said 20 people turned up, 15 of them are from the Baptist Student Union, just to see what the teachers would say. Okay? They hear both sides. Their own textbook, there in Chickasaw, Oklahoma, has 1/4 of the book, one entire unit, devoted only to evolution teaching. Nothing about creation. Evolution's a dying religion surviving only on tax dollars. It's dead. This textbook has over 100 pages where evolution is talked about. There's not one single mention of creation. So don't tell me they want to hear both sides. They don't, okay? They want to present one view only. It's called indoctrination, not education. Now, this is a chart showing how the atheists feel that the different states are doing with the teaching of evolution. They think you folks in Tennessee are doing a lousy job of teaching evolution to your kids. Go Tennessee. All right. Hey, hey. Okay. They think the folks right over here in North Carolina are doing a good job of teaching evolution. Well, North Carolina folks, get on the ball. Turn your state red by the next time they do this survey, okay? Now, is there anybody here that thinks teachers or textbooks should be allowed to use outdated or false information just to get students to believe a theory? Would that be a good idea? No, okay? Anybody here that thinks teachers that deliberately lie should be fired? Okay? Is there anybody here that thinks textbooks with lies should be banned or the lies torn out of the book? Think that'd be fair? All right. Well, buckle up, hang on, let's go. It's always amazed me how two people can look at the same thing and come to opposite conclusions of what they are looking at. You know, two people can look at Grand Canyon. One of them believes in evolution. He looks at the canyon and says, wow, look what the Colorado River did for millions and millions of years. The Bible-believing Christian stands there, looks at the same canyon, and says, wow, look what the flood did in about 30 minutes. Now, how was that canyon formed, huh? Textbook says over millions of years, the Colorado River carved the Grand Canyon from solid rock. Oh, now, hold on a second, okay? It's a fact the Grand Canyon exists. I've been there a bunch of times, studied. I taught earth science for 15 years. I love studying Grand Canyon. There are two interpretations of how it got there. The evolutionists will say it formed slowly with a little bit of water and lots of time, like, you know, billions of years. The creationists will say, no, it formed quickly by lots of water and a little bit of time, like a big flood in the days of Noah. And the guys who believe in evolution are always trying to erase the line between their interpretation and try to include it as if it is part of the fact. No, it's just your interpretation, guys, okay? This textbook says, the Colorado River has cut through layer upon layer of rock over millions of years. Well, now hold on a minute. This textbook says, the Colorado River cut through 2,000 meters of rock, exposing sediment layers like huge pages in the book of life. Scan the canyon wall from rim to floor and you look back through hundreds of millions of years. I don't think so. I was in a debate one time and this atheist said, Hovind, you're so stupid. Don't you know it took millions of years to carve the Grand Canyon? I said, well, sir, there's a couple things you ought to learn about Grand Canyon. If you built a dam across Grand Canyon, a huge lake would fill in behind it, covering several states, okay? I mean, take a lot of dirt to build a dam, but if you could build a dam across that canyon, you'd have a really big lake. Actually, some of the water from Wyoming drains through the Grand Canyon. It has a huge drainage pattern. Here's a picture of it, satellite false color image. You can see Grand Canyon right there, a big gash right across a ridge in the mountains. You folks in Tennessee know what a ridge is. Not really a mountain, just a big long ridge, okay? I've flown by and taken lots of pictures. I asked the pilot one time, I said, man, are we going near Grand Canyon? He said, yeah, about 100 miles. I said, can you get permission to, divert and go closer? He said, let me see what I can do. He got permission, and we flew right over the top of the canyon. I'm taking pictures like crazy, Love studying Grand Canyon. Actually, it's a bunch of useless real estate. I mean, what would you do with it if you had it, You can look at it and then go home. That's about it. But, I mean, you can't plow it, that's for sure, and you don't want your cows playing out there. But I said to this professor, I said, sir, there's a couple things to consider about this canyon. I said, these two red lines indicate what's called the snow line, okay? Between those two red lines is a ridge that gets about 6,900 to 8,500 feet above sea level. Now, the river enters the canyon at the far right over there at 2,800-foot elevation. The river flows downhill for 270 miles. Comes out the other side. If you look at it from a side view, a schematic view, it'll look like this. The river comes in 2,800-foot elevation. The ground rises up while the river goes down for 270 miles. I said, now, sir, there's a few things you ought to consider about this canyon. I said, did you know the top of Grand Canyon is higher than the bottom? He said, obviously. I said, sir, did you know the river only runs through the bottom? He said, well, yeah. I said, sir, did you know the top is higher than where the river enters the canyon by over 4,000 feet? He got a dazed look on his face like a calf looking at a new gate. I said, sir, did you know rivers don't flow uphill in Tennessee? There's no delta. Where's the mud that washed out of Grand Canyon? Nobody has a clue, okay? That river did not make that canyon. Grand Canyon's a washed out spillway. There used to be two big lakes, Grand Lake and Hopi Lake. The lakes are long gone, but the beaches are still there. You can still see the beach line. They got too full and went over the top and washed out that canyon in a hurry. Any farmer that's ever built a dam to hold water for his cows will tell you, once the water goes over the top of the dam, it's all over with. That's why they guard the levee like crazy during flood seasons, don't they? Get out there with sandbags. You don't want it to even get started. It's gone in a flash, okay? This river flows down this way. Obviously, it started at the top. Must have been a big lake backed up there, too. Even El Paso, Texas is called El Paso because it's the pass, okay? I bet there used to be a big lake backed up behind El Paso that dried up and left the white sands of New Mexico behind. That's another long, interesting story. But if you look at Grand Canyon, it's pretty obvious it's a washed-out spillway, okay? Almost all rivers around the world come together at what's called acute angles, less than 90 degrees. I mean, the rivers merge and keep going the same, general direction. If you look at Grand Canyon, the rivers on the lower left are indeed merging at acute angles, less than 90 degrees. But if you look at the upper right, the rivers are flowing backwards. Why would they do that? The rivers run backwards, hit the main channel, turn around, and come back out the other way. It's called a barbed canyon. There aren't many places like this on the planet. Well, this is evidence that a lake is draining, and as the water's running off the spillway backwards into the channel, it turns around, or off the dam. Water runs off the dam into the low place, turns around, and comes back out through the crack, through the breach in the dam. Grand Canyon was not made by the Colorado River over millions of years. That is one of the lies you kids are going to face in your textbook. It's just not geophysically possible for that to happen. Now, are there any farmers or vets in the crowd that might know what this machine is? What is that, brother? That's a calf puller. That's a what? A calf puller. Once in a while, a cow has a hard time having that baby calf, And so they get the calf puller out, tie the cable around the calf's legs, and jack the calf out of the cow. You get a few tons of pressure on there, calf comes right out, no problem. Well, one day, this farmer was out pulling a calf. It was a breech birth. The back feet are coming out first. That's not good, but, you know, it happens once in a while. So the farmer had the calf puller out there, and he's trying to pull the calf out of the cow. And a city fella stopped his car to see what on earth is going on. And the farmer said, "Have you ever seen anything like this before?" The city fella said, "I have never seen nothing like this." The farmer said, "Do you have any questions?" The city fellow said, "Yes, sir, I have one question. It's been bugging me for 10 minutes. The farmer said, "Well, what's your question?" And the city fellow said, "How fast do you figure that calf was going when it ran into that cow?" No, 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 no. We're not separating the wreck here, fellas. You know, it's possible for two people to be looking at the same thing, and one of them is getting the wrong idea of what he's looking at. The Bible warned us that was going to happen. Knowing this first, there shall come in the last days scoffers. Did you know there are people that scoff at the Bible? I deal with them on a regular basis. I attract them like a lightning rod. They scoff, it says, because of their lust. There's no scientific reason for them to reject the Bible. They just don't like that book because it chaps their hide. So they're scoffing because of their lust, not because of their science, okay? Even Huxley admitted, I suppose the reason we leapt at origin of species was that the idea of God interfered with our sexual mores. We don't want God telling us what to do. Okay? Arthur Keith said evolution is unproved and unprovable. We believe it because the only alternative is special creation, and that is unthinkable. The Bible says they did not like to retain God in their knowledge. For this cause, God shall... Actually, at the Scopes monkey trial, 1925, over here in Dayton, Tennessee. How far is Dayton from here, Steve? About 100 miles, okay. This is what they were going to use as evidence for evolution. The lowest layers are obviously the oldest. Page 275 of the court transcript. No, the oldest layers are not obviously the oldest. Did you know in still water, sediment layers settle out, the bottom one first, and then the second one, and then the third one? That's correct. But in moving water, you can get 5 or 6 or 10 layers to form simultaneously. They form from one end and travel across. So it's possible to have a fossil on the bottom that is younger than a fossil on top, if it's moving water. There's a great video tape called Experiments in Stratification. It covers all that if you want more on that. Or get our video number 6. We'll get more of that later. I like to ask evolutionists, I say, guys, your geologic column contains limestone quite a few places. If I handed you a piece of limestone, how would you know if it's 100-million-year-old Jurassic limestone or 600-million-year-old Cambrian limestone? I mean, exactly what's the difference? They'd say, well, the only way to tell the difference is by the index fossils. That's precisely my point. They date the layers by the fossils. This textbook shows the kids a trilobite, and it says, boys and girls, trilobites make good index fossils. If a trilobite is found in a rock layer, the rock layer probably formed 500 to 600 million years ago. I don't think so. Somebody found a human shoe print where the guy with a shoe on had stepped on and smashed a trilobite. They asked evolutionists all over, how on earth could a human step on a trilobite? If trilobites lived 500 million years ago, and man didn't get here till, 3 million years ago, and they didn't start wearing shoes till 10,000 years ago, how could a human step on a trilobite? One atheist said, well, it's obviously. The only answer would be that aliens visited the planet 500 million years ago. Oh, them aliens will do it every time. Another guy said, well, maybe there was a large trilobite shaped like a shoe that fell on a small one. Now, there are some big trilobites, okay, but I don't think they're shaped like a shoe. Actually, the trilobite has the most complicated eyeball ever. Trilobite eyes are unbelievable. And this is one of the first creatures to evolve, and it already has the most complex eye, which just the eye is one of the most complex features you could have. No, trilobites are not index fossils for anything, okay? There are all kinds of different types of trilobites, and there probably are some still alive today. Certainly the Baltic isopod is still alive. A guy sent me a couple weeks ago, about a couple months ago, I guess, a whole jar full of trilobites from the Prudhoe Bay water treatment plant up there for the oil factory they've got, oil refining rig. When they arrived in Pensacola, Florida, they were still alive in the jar. But I don't know how to keep a trilobite alive. I mean, you give it mouth to what, some resuscitation, but they all died, but we got them in our museum there. Somebody just sent me a large one that they got down in the Caribbean, about this big. It's in our museum, and it was frozen. They said, yeah, I pulled it off the rock myself down in the Caribbean, still alive. They call it some kind of roach. Roach, it looks like a big trilobite. This textbook shows the kids a graptolite. It says, boys and girls, this is 410 million years old. I don't think so. Graptolites were found still alive in the South Pacific 10 years ago. So if you find graptolite, you can't use that as an index fossil for any age rock, okay? They tell the kids in school the lobe-finned fish is the index fossil for Devonian, 325 million years old. See that short leg, boys and girls? He's got a little bitty leg and then the fin. Ah, see, that proves he's evolving from a leg to a fin. No, that's a lie. The lobe-finned fish are still alive today. They're swimming around the Indian Ocean. And when they caught the first one in 1938, the scientists looked at it and said, wow, would you look at that? They survived for 325 million years. It never dawned on them once to question the geologic column. That thought never crossed their brain. You don't question the geologic column. It is holy and sacred. You just have to say it survived for 325 million years. It's in the textbooks today. And they still say it's the index fossil for 325 million year old rock, even though they know they're swimming around the ocean. How can they be that dumb? This lady wrote a book about it, A Fish Caught in Time. She says, boys and girls, this is our own great uncle, 40 million times removed. She does look a little fishy, kind of around the gills there. Okay. You're going to be told that dinosaurs are index fossils for the Jurassic period, 70 million, or Cretaceous, 70 million years ago. That's baloney. Dinosaur bones were found here recently that had blood cells still in them. How long are the blood cells going to last? Here's soft tissue found with dinosaur bones, still flexible, soft tissue in March of 2005. There's fossilized human hands found in the same rock strata as dinosaur bones. Now, they tell you the layers are different ages. That's simply baloney, okay? Now, Charlie Darwin didn't like round numbers, so he said the Wealdian deposits are 306,662,400 years old. Oh, how could he possibly know such a thing, okay? All over the world, petrified trees are found standing up, connecting these different rock layers. Petrified trees standing up. Now, how long does a dead tree stand up around here before it falls down? 5 years, maybe 10 years? 5 million? Oh, no, not 5 million, that's for sure, right? But yet petrified trees in the vertical position are found all over the planet. I'll just flash through some pictures real quick here. There are all kinds of petrified trees found standing up. And they're running through multiple layers, and the kids are being taught the layers are different ages, and yet here's one tree connecting them all. I'm having a hard time believing these layers are different ages. That's what I'm having. Central Alabama's got a large coal mine with a whole bunch of petrified trees standing up running through 2 seams of coal, the Blue Creek and the Mary Lee. Now they're going to tell you in school, for coal to form, a forest has to grow, and then it all falls over and turns into a swamp, and then it gets buried, and then new mud washes in on top, and the coal slowly forms from the forest that was buried. And then thousands of years later, another forest grows on top, and a whole new layer of coal formed. So if you find 2 layers of coal, oh, that took thousands of years. That's what they'll tell you in school. That's simply baloney. We'll cover more on coal formation on video 6, but if you look at the samples of trees found in this coal mine, you look at sample A, B, C, D, E, F, G, I mean, any freshman law student could tell you, hey folks, I think I can prove these 2 coal formations formed at the same time, very quickly. Within a few weeks or months of each other, that's for sure. Probably during the flood in the days of Noah. We'll cover more on that on video 6. In Cookeville, Tennessee, how far is Cookeville from here? 100 miles? What's that? 150 miles. In Cookeville, Tennessee, there's a coal mine with petrified trees standing, running. Here's coal at the bottom. The tree is coalified at the bottom, petrified in the middle, and coalified on top, where it went through a second coal seam. Same tree. By the way, why are coal seams generally found on top of layers of rock or clay? Wouldn't be a pretty poor place to grow a forest? Ought to be on top of soil, don't you think? Yeah. Polystrate fossils are found all over the world. In Joggins, Nova Scotia, there are dozens of petrified trees standing up, connecting different rock layers. Scientists go up there and look at them and just say, wow, that's curious. No, it's more than curious. It's devastating to your teaching that the layers are different ages. There's a brochure you can get from our bookstore. It's $2. It's got 30-some pictures of color pictures of petrified trees in the vertical position. Occasionally, the petrified trees are found upside down, running through many rock layers. Now we really got a problem. I've thought about this till my brain hurts. The evolutionists have two ways to solve this. They can say, well, Hovind, you know, the trees stood upright for millions of years while the layers formed around them. Or the trees grew through hundreds of feet of solid rock looking for sunlight. There's a third way to look at it. You know, maybe they were all buried in a big flood. How fast was that calf going? Keep that thought in mind, okay? Mount St. Helens blew thousands of trees into Spirit Lake. Lots of those trees are stuck in the mud at the bottom of Spirit Lake. They're going to petrify in the standing position. More on video 6 about that. It doesn't take long for things to petrify. Here's petrified firewood. The guy chopped on it before it turned to stone. Here's a mummified dog stuck in a tree. Turned to stone. It chased a coon up the tree apparently and got stuck. They named it Stucky. What would you call it, okay? Here's a petrified cowboy boot with the cowboy's legs still in it. The boot was made in 1950 and the leg is turned to stone. Here's petrified fish giving birth. It does not take millions of years to give birth. Praise God, okay? Here's a petrified hat. Petrified pickle found in a jar. The guy sent me the jar and pickle. He said, Brother Hovind, I found this in Montana in an old home. The house was junk. The roof was gone. The house was falling apart. But he said, you want a petrified pickle for your museum? I said, of course. Who in their right mind would not want a petrified pickle, you know? Come on down to Pensacola, Dinosaur Adventureland, and see the petrified pickle. Here's petrified sacks of flour found in a flour mill that flooded in 1910 in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. Here's petrified toadstool. There's an amazing gem and mineral museum just south of Bloomington, Illinois, in a little bitty tiny town called Shirley, Illinois. You got to be trying to find it to get there, but it's worth going to see the Funk Gem and Mineral Museum. Okay? Here's petrified acorns. This kid sent them to me. He said, Brother Hovind, I was 7 years old at the time. He said, I stuck these acorns in a bucket of water, and I thought they might, you know, sprout and make some trees, and I forgot about them. Next spring, my mama found the bucket on the back porch, and the acorns had turned to stone. He said, would you like them for your museum? I said, of course. Come on down and see the petrified acorns. More on petrification on video number 6. So kids, when they tell you the layers are different ages, you tell them Kent Hovind said they're confused or they're lying. It is not correct. Those layers all formed, nearly all of them, at the time of Noah's flood. 80 to 85% of Earth's surface does not even have 3 geologic periods appearing in correct consecutive order. Even though this geologic column does not exist, except in the textbooks, that teaching is what changed people in the 1830s away from believing the Bible to believing in uniformitarianism. This teaching especially affected a young preacher. He just got out of Bible college, studied to be a pastor of a church. His name was Charles Darwin. Anybody ever heard of Charles Darwin? Charles Darwin graduated from Bible college to be a preacher. And he's going to sail around the world for 5 years first and collect some bugs for some, bugologist back there in England. Charlie brought some books with him. He brought his Bible, of course. He just got out of Bible college. And he brought this brand new book, Principles of Geology. Charlie said that book changed his life forever. He later wrote to a friend and said, disbelief crept over me slowly. I felt no distress. He slowly lost his faith in the Bible. As Darwin sailed around the world, he stopped off at the Galapagos Islands. Here on those islands, he noticed there were 14 different varieties of finches. Little tiny bird with a little tiny beak. But the beak shapes were different. Now, the Grants went there and studied them and said, wow, during dry years, the beak is 1/10 of a millimeter thicker, and during wet years, it's 1/10 of a millimeter thinner. But it always averages back out. 1/10 of a millimeter. Do you know how much that is? Not much. Darwin looked at the birds and said, you know what? I think all these birds had a common ancestor. I bet you're right, Charlie. It was a bird. And then Charlie said, well, maybe this proves that birds and bananas are related. You say, oh, he never said that. He sure did. I knew you wouldn't believe me, so I brought his book. It's right here. The Origin of Species by Charles Darwin. On page 170, Darwin said, it's a truly wonderful fact that all animals and all plants throughout all time and space should be related to each other. Isn't he saying the birds and bananas are related? He sure is. This is a lie. What Charlie observed is what is sometimes called microevolution. Microevolution tells us dogs produce a variety of dogs. That's a fact. It happens, okay? And roses produce a variety of roses. Nobody argues about that. The question is, does it go any farther than that? You may get a big dog or a little dog, but you get a dog every time. And probably the dog, the wolf, and the coyote had a common ancestor. I wouldn't argue about that. We did the test this morning. Had a 5-year-old girl. Said, okay, here we have a dog, a wolf, a coyote, and a banana. Which one is not like the others? She got it. The banana. We got college professors can't figure that out. Here's National Geographic says, the evolution of dogs from wolves. Well, duh, nobody's arguing about that. Yeah, dogs came from wolves, okay? The Bible says they bring forth after their kind. 10 times it says that in the first chapter. See, this word evolution has 6 meanings. We've been through this before, so I'm going to go through it kind of quickly. There's first of all cosmic evolution, Big Bang. Secondly, chemical evolution, where all the chemicals come from hydrogen. That's baloney. Thirdly, stellar evolution, where all the stars form from dust. You cannot get dust to condense into a solid star. Can't happen. There's Boyle's gas laws that drive it away, okay? Then there's enough stars out there, though we can all have 11 trillion to ourselves. Then you have organic evolution, where life gets started from non-living material. And then macroevolution, where an animal changes to a different kind of animal. None of those have ever been observed. Number 6, variations within the kinds, sometimes called microevolution. That one happens. The first 5 are religious. So whenever you discuss evolution, you have to define what you're talking about. If you're talking about number 6, I'm with you. I agree, that happens. If you're talking about the first 5, that doesn't happen. That's something you believe happens, okay? Watch how they change the definition for the kids. They say, okay, boys and girls, evolution is change over time. Is that really what they mean? Watch this carefully now. In other words, living things have changed over time. Wait. Are you going to skip over the first 4? They just want to bypass the first 4 stages like it's not part of the theory? Well, then you don't have a coherent theory. Then they say, evolution is defined as a change in species over time. Now they're down to what I believe in. I think species can change. I think you can get some really weird varieties of animals, but they're still the same kind, okay? This is a lie, kids. That's not really what they mean by evolution. They want to give you examples of number 6 and make you believe that the whole theory has been proven. Don't get brainwashed. Most evolutionists will say, well, macroevolution is just micro with longer periods of time. No, it's not. They had a big conference on this very question in Chicago. They said the central question of the Chicago conference was whether the mechanisms underlying microevolution can be extrapolated to explain the phenomena of macroevolution. The answer can be given as a clear no. It doesn't work. Variations happen, sure, but they have limits. Did you know farmers have been trying to get bigger pigs for a long time? Do you think they'll ever get a pig as big as Texas? Nah, I bet there's a limit, isn't there? Okay? Roaches become resistant to pesticides. Do you think they'll ever become resistant to a sledgehammer? Probably not. See? There's a tiger had 3 kittens, all different colors, same litter. That's variations, but it's still a tiger. That's not evolution. They always end up producing the same kind of offspring, just like the Bible says. The information for the new variety had to be in the gene code already, or it couldn't produce it. No new information is ever added. The gene pool of the new variety is always more limited. Somebody spent years crossbreeding dogs to develop the Chihuahua. All that money to make a dog that's 100% useless. I mean, think about it. How long would the Chihuahuas last in the real world? Turn them all loose into the woods. Watch what happens. They'd run up to the wolf. Yep, 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 yep. Crunch. End of gene code, right? Genetic information is lost, not added when you get a strange variety. Real evolution would need an increase in genetic complexity. We don't ever observe that. Now, I grew up in Illinois, corn country. Did you know there are so many kinds of corn up there, they have to number them? You'll be driving down the highway and there's a sign that says BX65. Don't mix it with XL29. Something will explode. But folks, you can crossbreed corn from now till the cows come home and you are always going to get corn. You're never going to get a hamster or a tomato or a whale to grow on your corn stalk. It just ain't going to happen, okay? There's a whole variety of dogs in the world, and they might have had a common ancestor. A dog. There's BBC News. It looks like 95% of current dogs came from just 3 original founding females. Hey, they're getting closer. Right here it says, today's dogs come in all shapes and sizes, but scientists believe they evolved from just a handful of wolves tamed by humans living in or near China less than 15,000 years ago. They're getting closer. Man, if they keep studying their Bible, keep studying the science, they're going to be an independent Baptist when they're done. You get done climbing the mountain of truth, that's where you end up, you know. Okay. This Irish textbook calls them divergent evolution. Oh, come on. They show 5 dogs around a wolf, and that's not divergent evolution. Don't give it a fancy name. It's still a dog. It's just a variety of dog. This Mexican textbook says, the horse and the zebra had a common ancestor. I agree. It looked like a horse. You know, 4-wheel drive, genuine leather upholstery, all the standard horse equipment, okay? They got little tiny horses today. We had the world's smallest horse come visit our dinosaur adventure land. Talk about useless. I mean, you know, you can't ride it. Well, my granddaughter could, but it won't bark, you know. What do you do with a horse like that? You know, horses, zebras, and asses can all be crossbred. They have competition in California. Who can get the weirdest animal? They get zorses, zonkies, zeonies, zedonks, zebras, and shebras. Here's a zebra who forgot to put his PJs on. Here's a herd of zebroids running around. You know, in the last 100 years, the Kentucky Derby's gone from an average winning speed of 127 seconds down to 123 seconds. Now, even in the old days, they had some pretty low times turned in, okay? Question. How much money would you guess has been spent on selective breeding trying to get the fastest horse for the Kentucky Derby? Millions and millions of dollars. They do the same thing right around here, don't they? Spend lots of money for a Tennessee Walker. What's the most expensive Tennessee walking horse that you've ever heard of? $1 million for one horse? $3 million for one horse. That's how much per pound? Man, I was in Italy. We ate horse over there. It's good, too. Tastes like chicken, you know. Now, I don't know if they've got to the absolute limit of horse speed or not. I don't know. But I suspect they're getting kind of close, okay? If you really want to win the Kentucky Derby, why don't you breed wings on your horse and fly around the track in 12 seconds? The whole point is, sure, you get varieties, but they're limited. There's a bunch of different kinds of cows in the world, and they might have had a common ancestor. A cow. This magazine's where you order chickens. All right, boys and girls, should we order, you know, cinnamon queens, red rocks, white rocks, cherry eggers, or brown leghorns? But look what the magazine says. Jungle fowl are the original bird from which all varieties and strains of domesticated chickens are derived. Did you know all the chickens had a common ancestor? Anybody want to guess what it was? Chicken. You got it. There are 8 kinds of bears in the world, and they might have had a common ancestor. A bear. Mm-hmm. You know, broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, and Brussels sprouts all have a common ancestor called a plant. Mm-hmm. In California, they've got huge fields where they graft English walnut trees onto black walnut stumps. They do it because the black walnut stump, the root system is tough and can handle the weather over there. But the black walnut doesn't taste as good, it doesn't sell for as much money, and it's tougher to crack. English walnuts taste better, they sell for more money, and they're easier to crack, but the root system rots. So they cut them off and stick them together. They do it all over there. Well, they can do it because they're both a walnut. So you could never graft an English walnut tree onto the back of a turtle. That won't work, see? The sugar beets were used for years. When sugar got expensive, they wanted to get sugar out of beets. So they tried to do selective breeding to increase the sugar content in sugar beets. They raised it from 6% to 17%. But could not, they ran into a brick wall. Hey, can't go past 17. And the further they got away from the normal wild sugar beet, the more problems they started having. Now you got to babysit the field and spray pesticides and bugicides and everything else on it, okay? Because its disease resistance goes down. People say, don't bacteria become resistant to drugs? Well, that's because they lose information, not gain it. I'll show you. Dr. Spetner points out, this is based on a misunderstanding, for the mutations that cause antibiotic resistance still involve information loss. For example, to destroy bacterium, the antibiotic streptomycin attaches to part of a bacterial cell called ribosomes. Mutations sometimes cause a structural deformity in ribosomes. Since the antibiotic cannot connect with the misshapen ribosome, the bacterium is resistant. Even though this mutation turns out to be beneficial for the moment, it still constitutes a loss of information, not a gain. No evolution has taken place. The bacteria are not stronger. In fact, under normal conditions with no antibiotic present, they are weaker than their non-mutated cousins. I'll give you an example. Suppose somebody's coming through town and they're handcuffing everybody, taking them off to jail, and then they're going to kill them. But you don't have any arms, so they can't handcuff you. Ha. Is that a beneficial mutation to not have arms? Well, yeah, for the moment, okay. But in long term, it's not beneficial, okay? And so all the examples they ever point to are bacteria becoming resistant to drugs. That's a loss of information, not a gain. The Bible is correct. They bring forth after their kind. James Hutton wrote a book in 1795, and people began to doubt the earth was 6,000 years old. Charlie Lyell wrote a book in 1830, and people began to doubt the flood, and Charlie Darwin's book made people doubt the Creator. And by the mid-1800s, people were wondering, wow, if God didn't do it, how did we get here? Who's in charge of the world? That led directly to the rise of communism, Marxism, socialism, Nazism. We'll cover that on Seminar Part 5. Politically incorrect, the dangers of this evolution theory. Now, Darwin didn't originate the evolution theory. It was around before him. He just simply made it popular, okay? But Timothy was warned by Paul here in 1 Timothy 6. You be careful about avoiding profane and vain babblings and oppositions of science falsely so called. Evolution is not science. Evolution's a religion in every sense of the word. Hitler said, let me control the textbooks, I'll control the state. Professor Wilson at Harvard University said, as were many persons from Alabama, I was a born-again Christian. When I was 15, entered the Southern Baptist Church with great fervor and interest in the fundamentalist religion. I left at 17 when I got to the University of Alabama and heard about evolution theory. He lost his faith, first year of college. That's what happened to